You should be avoiding Braelon Allen in your rookie drafts at all costs. We will explain why in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. On today's show, we are talking about three late round players and positions. We'll get to that in a second, that you should be avoiding in your rookie drafts. Kate, I want to start with Braelon Allen, who is one of the more polarizing prospects in the 2024 NFL draft. And I don't think his landing spot in the NFL draft helped that out at all either.
No, Braelon Allen is always going to be the case of like what could have been for me, because looking at the depth chart, Marcus, like going to the New York Jets behind a guy like Breece Hall, they obviously have Izzy Abunakanda. They've got, now Braelon Allen. They drafted Isaiah Davis, who, if y'all have been listening to the Locked On Dynasty podcast here, you'll remember right before the draft, he was one of my favorite draft sleepers because I loved his skill set. And now they have three running backs who I thought, like Breece Hall, Braelon Allen, and Isaiah Davis, like if they were all on different teams, there, I think, is a realistic chance that each of them could lead their own respective backfields. Having them all in the mix here. Now, I want to ask you, so like Braelon Allen, maybe he's basically the handcuff to Breece Hall. I think he's a very high-end handcuff. I think he's, before stepping on a field, on paper, one of the better backup running backs. But what is the pathway to him finding the football field with the New York Jets? Because right now it seems pretty difficult, even despite the fact that, Breece Hall, he accounted for 57.4% of the team's rush attempts last year. That means, hey, maybe there's, some 40% up for grabs. What are the chances that Allen can make those his?
Assuming there isn't an injury. I mean, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. Is there any pathway to him carving a role?
No. And I guess there's a chance that he could get 3 or 4 touches a game, but like a pathway to him being fantasy relevant, no, it's not happening. We're talking about one of the last picks in the 4th round. And again, draft capital matters at running back less than any other position. But late 4th round draft capital in not the deepest of drafts is a little bit concerning. I also have a lot of concerns about his overall athleticism. Okay, Braelon Allen didn't do any testing ahead of the NFL draft, didn't do anything at the combine, nothing at the pro day. Get some whispers that he was going to run in the mid 4.6s. Coming out of high school, he was like one of the best athletes. He was on the Bruce Feldman Freaks list. I don't think people were anticipating him testing maybe as athletically as some of the rumors were out there. And so that's why he just didn't test, right? Like, you can't get knocked that much if you don't test. But we saw with somebody like Audric Estime, who you and I really, really liked, the explosion drills were eye-popping, right? Like elite vertical, elite broad jump. You run a 4.7 and now you're a 5th round pick despite the tape being excellent. I think the same thing was kind of happening with Braelon Allen. I just don't see it. Like, this is a team that wants to win right now. They're not going to want to play a kind of developmental running back that needs a lot of work in the passing game, that doesn't really have the speed to make plays out on the outside. He's an avoid for me. Also because, Kate, Breece Hall is really good and really young, and it feels like the Jets that want to keep him around for a while. I don't see Braelon Allen leading this backfield at all while Breece Hall is there. So what are you waiting for here?
Yeah, I don't know that you're waiting for much. I think he is a handcuff at best. And that is the absolute best case scenario, that in the case of Breece Hall going down with injury, definitely not going to be as efficient, definitely lacks that top end speed that Breece Hall has. But generally speaking, I still think he's a good running back. He's also 20
I do
years
too.
old.
Yeah.
A big, part of why I was so intrigued with him in the pre-draft process is because he's so young. We have a track record of production at a major program. And I thought the ceiling was still a bit untapped, which I think makes this pick all the more questionable for me in terms of like the Jets and why they made this fit. And then they go back to the well again with Isaiah Davis. Like, do you have any insight on what the Jets were envisioning for Braelon Allen and Isaiah Davis? Because, like, for me, both of them, it tanks their value. I don't think they
Yeah.
want to move on from Breece Hall. So, like, it feels like a waste.
It can be. I also have a really hard time saying like any day 3 picks are a waste
That's
because
fair.
it's
That's
day
fair.
3 pick. And, like, especially in this draft, like the players
With
that you
2
were
day
getting,
3 running backs, like,
I think the players that you were getting at pick 130 weren't all that different than the ones you were getting at 230. So
okay.
to me, this was an offensive draft for the Jets. They drafted Olafashanu in round 1. They drafted Malachi Corley in the top of round 3. I think they just wanted to add talent and depth to their roster in case something were to happen to Aaron Rodgers. Now they have more talent for a Tyrod Taylor or whoever the backup quarterback is. I think Braelon Allen can be a really solid number 2, number 3 running back. But in terms of somebody that you're drafting for your dynasty team because you think he can be a week-to-week starter, let's say if Breece Hall does go down, I don't even see that. I think he would be a part-time player in a committee if Hall wasn't part of the equation at all. So I'm out. I do wonder what could have happened with Braelon Allen if he went to the Cowboys like in the round 3 or something like that. But no, this is not a good situation for him.
No, I think if you draft Braelon Allen, you're probably going to be parking him on your taxi squad, or he's just going to be sitting on the bench. And barring an injury, I just don't see any realm of possibility where you're going to feel comfortable even sliding him into the flex
No.
spot in any given situation. And that's coming from someone who really likes Braelon Allen, I think even a bit more than you do. So if I'm out, that's when it's time to sound the alarm bells, because I
I
love
get it.
Braelon Allen. Like, this was the worst case scenario for
It was.
him. And I don't know, maybe your Cowboys, after they get a good look at Zeke in his old age, once they see him rolling up with his cane and his crickety joints, maybe they're like, man, we gotta make a move for a running back. And I don't know, maybe they send a 2025 third for Braelon Allen and rectify what they should have done here in 2024.
Just side note. My birthday's next weekend, not a humble brag or anything, but I turned 33. It's always hilarious to me that when we get the running backs, Ezekiel Elliott, 28 years old, needs a cane out there. Just one of the oldest running backs in the league. Meanwhile,
Marcus, I would love to see you after taking I don't know how many career carries does Ezekiel.
Yeah.
I would love to see you
No,
after
you
that
wouldn't.
many hits from
No, you
like
wouldn't.
300-pound defensive linemen. Like, I would love to see whether or not you need a
Funny to me.
cane at the
That's
age
all.
of 33. Oh my gosh.
All right, let's move on from me taking running back carries to Tez Walker, who might have seen his stock drop the most during the pre-draft process. We'll discuss why next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. When it comes to your financial future, you think that you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, and you've invested all that you can. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, and that's Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for some extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data that you need in one place. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspective, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts from a unified view for your wealth, including 401k and other investments, A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's also how Yahoo Finance ensures that you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. Again, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, Kate, let's talk about Tez Walker, who was drafted by the Ravens on day 3, going earlier than I think he should in dynasty rookie drafts. What do you got here?
Here's the thing about Tez Walker. I think when you're kind of doing like this face sort of evaluation, looking for positive traits, we talk a lot about how, important athleticism is obviously for these rookies. And let's talk about Tez Walker's, NFL combine, because that was unfortunately after the Senior Bowl where he lost, I think, a lot of stock here. And if that Senior Bowl had never happened, I think folks would have looked at this combine and been pretty impressed. Came in at 6 foot 1.5 inches, 193 pounds, so like a little bit undersized in terms of weight, but ran a 4.36 40-yard dash, 40.5-inch vertical jump, which is absolutely absurd, 93rd percentile, 134-inch broad jump, 97th percentile for the wide receiver position. Just a really solid athlete. And that I think kind of is something that you see when you're watching him on tape. But the biggest issue for Tez Walker is a lack of consistency in so many areas. Looking at his advanced metrics, 45th percentile over the last 2 seasons in terms of receiving grade. You're really going to like his separation percentage, 86th percentile in separation percentage, open target rate. And I think in a big way, that was because he's able to generate space just thanks to like his speed and being able to accelerate a bit down the field. Really unreliable hands, though, 36th percentile in terms of drop percentage. Does not do anything after the catch. 10th percentile in terms of yards after the catch per reception over the last 2 seasons. So when you kind of look at this guy who I think had, a limited route tree, feels a little bit one-trick pony-ish in terms of he wins with maybe his athleticism, but not in terms of technique when it comes to the wide receiver position. Pair that with, I think, a very concerning Senior Bowl that I'd love for you to share a little bit more about in terms of how much that impacted the general evaluation of Tez Walker throughout the league.
Yeah, before we get to the Senior Bowl, just a real quick recap of his career. So he tore his ACL during his senior season of high school. So he had to sit out the entire 2019 season. He went to Tennessee State, transferred out of Tennessee State to North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central in 2020 canceled their football season because of COVID-19. He transferred out of North Carolina Central to Kent State, played 5 games in 2021. So again, we're in year 3 of his college career, 124 yards and 1 touchdown. Year 4 has a big season, 58 yards, 58 receptions, 921 yards, 11 touchdowns. Transfers to North Carolina, and because of some transfer rules, wasn't able to play early in the season, eventually gets reinstated at North Carolina and puts up pretty good numbers in the second half of the season, 699 yards, 7 touchdowns, goes to the Senior Bowl, and it was a disaster. I mean, wasn't creating separation. Okay, there was, I believe it was day 2 of practice. I saw him drop 7 passes in one-on-one in team drills. 7. I mean, that is unheard of. Now, drops weren't a big issue for him in college. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't like he was dropping everything that was thrown at him.
To be fair, he had 5 drops in just 8 games played this year.
Now he was targeted a lot, but it's not. It's concerning, but it's not the biggest thing. To me, it just speaks to the lack of consistency. And this isn't a really young receiver that I think maybe has some upside. I mean, he's going to be 23 going into his rookie year. He played 5 years, 5 years removed from his high school football. I think he got drafted where he did because of his athleticism. There's just a lot about his game that I don't know if it's going to translate well to the NFL.
And here's the thing. So, like, when you're at some of these smaller programs, right? Like when you're at a Kent State where maybe you're the best athlete on the field, maybe you can win out in some of those situations. But I think when you go to the Senior Bowl, you're in one-on-ones, you are put into a position where maybe you're not the best athlete on the field, or at the very worst, you are playing with comparable athletes of comparable size. Like, I think that probably tells you a little bit more, because if he can't win with the athleticism, I don't think he has enough refinement as a receiver. And like we talked about Luke McCaffrey on yesterday's show, right? And I said, like, yeah, doesn't necessarily, like, a better route runner than maybe you would guess for a guy who's played the wide receiver position for 2 years, but like still, I think an untapped ceiling, right? Because like he's still very early on in that positional journey, and there's refinement that he needs to find in his game, but like he still has time to do it. Like Tez Walker, for contrast, he has played the wide receiver position. He has been a number of different programs, and I still think he lacks that kind of refinement. That, like, I don't know if maybe we've seen some of the best of Tez Walker. I think he'll be a solid rotational player. Like, you're never going to be upset about having a really good athlete on the field when it comes to opening up your scheme. But like in terms of fantasy, I want volume and I want opportunity.
Can I give you my comp for him?
Yes.
I think he could have a very similar career to like Zay Jones, who was a 2nd-round pick by the Bills, who was an athlete, goes to the Raiders, has a really nice season. Jacksonville pays him a lot of money, and he's a fine number 3 receiver. But anytime he gets pushed into a role that's bigger than that and more important, he struggles a little bit. So for fantasy, he's behind Zay Flowers, not Zay Jones, Zay Flowers. The Ravens just signed Rashad Bateman to a contract extension, keeping him for the next 2 years. They have Mark Andrews. They have Isaiah Likely. They want to run the ball. Lamar's going to run the ball. It's just not a team that's going to have a lot of passing volume. And if you're projecting forward, right, like he's going to be 27, 28 by the time he gets his second contract, and maybe that's with the new team, you're going to lose all that upside. So he's a player that probably, no matter where he's going, I'm just out on.
Yeah. And, maybe he will prove us wrong here in the years to come. But even from a situational standpoint, I just don't see the pathway for him to do so. And I don't necessarily know that, like, in this very deep class of receivers, which offers a lot of refinement in so many areas, like Tez Walker is a guy that, like, I don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I always hope I'm wrong when I don't like these players for my fantasy teams. But I think you're probably going to park him on the bench, and you're not going to be able to do much else with him as long as he's on your dynasty roster.
All right, let's talk about one more position that you should be avoiding in your rookie drafts. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased in your life. So today I want to tell you how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. I don't get why when I'm on the treadmill at the gym, there's like 9 treadmills and the person comes up and walks right next to me on the next treadmill. It doesn't make any sense. Spread yourself out a little bit so you have some room. It bothered me. I was a little upset yesterday, but again, not that big in the grand scheme of things. But now I feel better that I was able to tell somebody. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have much bigger problems than somebody being too close to us on a treadmill or our favorite sports team losing. And it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Just visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing 3 players/positions that you should be avoiding in your late rounds of your rookie drafts. And Kate, what's our final one here?
We got to talk about the tight ends. Now, we've already talked about Brock Bowers, how like we still love the talent, but his landing spot with the Raiders isn't ideal. On yesterday's show, we talked about Ben Sinnott, one of our favorite late round rookie values. But Marcus, after that, I think things are probably a little bit more barren than we would like. Now, some of the tight ends that are being drafted after these two. So Ben Sinnott, definitely the tight end 2 in this class, I think, especially after seeing that draft capital. You have Jatavian Sanders, who's right now consensus tight end 3 in this class with the Carolina Panthers. Theo Johnson with the New York Giants, tight end 4. Cade Stover to the Houston Texans. Eric All to the Cincinnati Bengals, who I think is an intriguing option, but like, I
That's a
don't
wait and
know.
see. Like, you're not drafting Eric Hall, right? We want to see
No,
how healthy he is. Yeah.
that is the biggest concern. So like I am looking at all of these players, right? I think there's a question of, I think in some circumstances, team fit. Cade Stover, obviously, like they brought back oh my gosh.
The Jets, they brought
The Texans.
the Texans, they brought back Dalton
Dalton
Schultz.
Schultz. Oh my
They have
gosh.
Brevin Jordan still on the roster.
Yeah, I don't know. Apologies for my total brain disaster.
It's a
there,
Friday.
but yeah,
Listen, I get it.
it's Friday, so and I got a little bit of a head cold, so please don't mind me here. But like, if there has to be one of these late end tight ends, can you name one that like if you had to throw a dart?
Yeah. Theo Johnson, just
Yeah.
because
Okay.
athleticism
Cool.
matters so much. We're not sure what's going on with the Darren Waller situation. We've seen several Penn State players in the past just perform poorly in college and then get better in the NFL. He's an insane athlete, so gamble on him. But again, I'm probably not drafting him either unless I'm so desperate for tight end depth. I would just much rather take a running back that I like there. Take a receiver that maybe I like the landing spot. I just don't think this is a very good tight end class at all outside of the top 2 names.
Yeah, a couple of potential dart throws, but again, for every one of these sort of potential dart throws that maybe you have a good fit or you like the athlete, there's still resounding questions that like nobody else has really a complete profile. We talked about again, Ben Sinnott being kind of checking off every single box in terms of athleticism, potential opportunity with his landing spot, collegiate production, like every single box. The rest of this class, I think, lacks just overall completeness. And that's probably why I'm just going to, maybe opt for one of these late round wide receivers, etc. But yeah, if I have to throw a dart throw, it's going to be probably for Theo Johnson. Doesn't have that excellent draft capital. Took him in the 4th round of the New York Giants. And we do know that, like, again, with Darren Waller and the questions, I think he's leaning towards retirement personally, based on the reports we've seen so far, though they haven't necessarily made that official. But like, yeah, I'll bet on his athleticism. He's a top end athlete and could be in a position with a offense that, like, they might have some targets to go around that
Sure.
available for the earning.
And again, the most important part, he's just a great athlete. I believe the most athletic tight end that we've had, according to the RAS score. Usually, that's not a bad idea, just to gamble on the athleticism and wait and see.
Is the so in terms of uh positions, right? For fantasy specifically, do you care any, like, is athleticism the most important trait for the tight end
Yes.
position?
Yes. Um it's the most correlated with fantasy success. We've had several receivers who have tested as average athletes become very, very good fantasy and dynasty receivers. But for the tight end position, it's almost exclusively great athletes that are at the top of that position. So, yeah, it's very rare that we get a bad athlete finished as a top 5, top 6, top 7 dynasty tight end. So, again, with Theo Johnson, you're talking about somebody 6'0", 260 pounds, ran a 4.57 with an 80-inch wingspan. If you're going to gamble and lose, I'd do it with Theo Johnson.
Yeah, and not many others here in these
No.
late rounds. Uh,
Tip
maybe.
Ryman, Tanner McLaughlin, AJ Barner, Jared Wiley, who ended up with the Chiefs. That's a good landing spot, but how long are we waiting there? Cade Stover, Dallin Hooker. Just pass on the tight ends, draft running backs and wide receivers in rounds 2, 3, and 4, and then move on.
Yeah, very fair. Because I'm going to be honest, I think you can probably expect, if not over the summer, come the season, you're probably going to find most of these rookie tight ends on your waiver wire.
Because they're just not going to produce and teams are going to get impatient. So I think that's a very, very good strategy. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post content every day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here on Monday.